I'm Dominic Collings. This is workshop video 3, and this video I'm going to go through workshop layout. It's a question that I've been asked specifically with reference to my shop. So with regards to workshop layout, my shop's a double garage. However, I didn't always have a double garage. I used to have a single garage. So you might look at this space and think it's a bit of a luxury, and you might say, well, I haven't got as much space. You might be looking and say, well, I've got more space than that, and that's fine. Basically, depending on space constraints, there's two real ways of working. You can either take the route where everything's on casters and everything lives against one wall. You pull each individual machine out individually, which maximises your space on the floor. That's really the way I worked when I had a single garage. Now that I've got a double garage, I've tried to make things a bit more static, a bit more stationary. It makes it a little bit more easy to work when you're trying to work your way through a project. But there are drawbacks with that as well. It's a little less flexible. What it comes down to really is picking your main core machines. Now, when you're starting off with woodworking, you're going to end up with a table saw at some point. You're going to end up with a planer thicknesser or a planer and a thicknesser. And you need to think about the more you do woodworking, the more machines you require. That's just the way it is. You find there's things you do again and again, and it takes too long to do either by hand or repetitive stuff. It's worth forking out for a machine. I've been woodworking off and on for about 15 years, so it may look like I've got a lot of kit, but most of this kit's been built up over a long period of time. So like I say, it comes down to machinery, and it comes down to wanting space either side. So I'm lucky enough to have a planer. I did have a planer thicknesser. The planing aspect of it was really poor, but the thickness aspect of it was really good. So I've kept my planer thicknesser as just a thicknesser, and I bought a planer because it's got longer beds. Now, that for me, it dominates one wall because I need a run of around about 6 feet. 6 feet, you rarely do a project when you've got when you're working with boards more than 6 feet long. So my planer's here, it's against the wall. I've currently got an extractor at the back, but I'm going to cover extraction in a subsequent video, so I'll not bother talking about that now. But I've got about a 6 foot run either side. It's also on casters, so if I need to move it out for any reason, which I never do, to be honest. But if I needed to move it, mainly for cleaning around the floor, I can. So this is a primary wall. My other primary wall is this wall along here. And by primary I mean there's no obstructions, I don't have a door, I don't have anything I've got to avoid specifically. So this is one uninterrupted run along an 18 foot length. That's about how my garage is, roughly 18 feet wide by 18 feet long. So what I've got here is storage. When it comes down to workshop layout, storage. Wherever you can put storage, put storage. So I started off really with these units on this wall as with my chop saw. Now I've got a chop saw, and to be honest, okay, it's a reasonably good quality one. It's a Delta saw. They're not in the UK anymore. They're pulled out a few years ago. But to be honest, I rarely use it. I've got quite a big space here, but I say you can never have too much space. I always say you can never have too many clamps, you can never have too much space, you never have enough space. What tends to happen is this area gets piled up with stuff while I'm in the middle of a project. It gets piled up with glue ups, it gets piled up with clamps and whatnot. So this rarely gets used. Even the best quality miter saws, they've got a little bit of flex in them, which just makes them not quite accurate enough for what you want, or for what's ideal. There's certain jobs I've done on this station which have been absolutely ideal, where the chop saw has been ideal for decking, things like that, where accuracy is not paramount, but you just want to do repeatable cuts all the time. That's the kind of woodworking you do. Chop saw station's really, really good. If you want to do furniture and you want to do cabinet making, it goes pretty much at the end of my wish list on tools. The table saw in general will do a much better job. A good table saw with a sliding table is much better than this. So rarely ever use it, but it's there anyway. But when I was doing this unit against the wall, I thought about 6 foot this side, 6 foot that side. The same with the mortise. You're going to be mortising legs up to, usually it's about 3 or 4 feet, but either way you're going to want space on either side, 3 foot one side or more, 3 foot the other side or more. So it seemed to make sense to me when I built this unit to push the fence of the mortise back as far as it would go, and then I set this chop saw into this table, and you can see this table's a little bit lower, so I didn't recess it into the unit, I just made that unit lower. So I recessed it in so everything's flat, and this fence and that fence are parallel. So what it means is, if I'm mortising anything, I've got max capacity on the mortiser and I've got max capacity on my chop saw. With the router table, again, this was an obvious place to put it because, again, it's on casters. I can pull it forward very slightly if I need a bit more space, or if I need a bit more depth. But it's exactly the same height as this unit here, so any stock I can feed all the way through, and I've got an uninterrupted run here. If I need more room between here and the wall, I can simply put it out to wherever I can. So that's a bit of a combination of how I've tried to set this workshop up static with making the best use of space, and how I used to work when I had a single garage with a tool against the wall that I pull out and use. Over here I've got a drill press, which again, I rarely move it. I never really need to, but again, this was a throwback. I did have a table saw, I had a small table saw, I had a small chop saw, I had cheap machinery when I had a single garage. That's all been upgraded to better stuff now. But one thing I didn't have was a good drill press. It was every now and again, it's the kind of thing, you don't use it every day, but you do use it quite regularly. It was one thing that I always wanted, but when I moved into this workshop, it was one of the first tools I bought, really. But again, I still had the mindset of having a single garage, and I didn't really want it static. I didn't want to bolt it to the floor, not be able to move it, or for it to be really tricky to move at a later date. So, and again, storage. So what I did was I've built this little unit here on the bottom. It's on casters, fixed at the back, rotating at the front. I actually had to, this was a full height freestanding drill press, and what I ended up doing with that is I had to dismantle it, and I cut about a foot, whatever the distance was from the floor to the top of the cabinet, which was about a foot. I cut a foot off it and I've mounted it to the cabinet. So again, in the mindset of the single garage, where lots of tools would go against the wall, this could be put anywhere in the shop really, and I can wheel it out. And to be honest, there have been occasions when I've been doing decking in the garden where it's been handy and I've just wheeled this all the way around the other side of the house. But a drill press is a good example of a tool where you don't really need that much space either side, or you rarely need much space either side. So this is a kind of good tool where you can either put it on casters like this, which I'd recommend because you've got maximum flexibility and maximum versatility. If you really wanted it fixed, it's the kind of tool that would go in the corner. If it goes in the corner, you've got a 6 foot run that way, you've got a 6 foot run that way, over either wall, but you don't need a run that goes all the way through. So that's a kind of good tool that would go in a corner. I'd already got my corners kind of tied up before I bought this machine. It's fine where it is. If I did need big capacity, I can pull it out. In the bottom of the drawer, everything to do with drilling all the drill bits, countersinking bits, all that kind of stuff. Anything I would use on the drill press is in there. I've got a little metalworking vise. You might say that I don't have a top. They sell kind of like woodworking table attachments. You see people build them all the time with fences. And the reason why I didn't do that is because I did have something kind of like very basic made out of MDF. The reason I didn't do that is because I was going to put it in the corner at some point. I didn't want to have a fence which was going to limit me. I wanted to be able to come in from 90-degree angles to work on pieces of wood, and a fence would have stopped me from doing that. So I can understand why people do them. They sell them commercially as like add-on tops. Not really for me. Not incorrect. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. It's just those are the kind of things to think about when you're thinking about tool placement and workshop layout. At the back I've got a batten on the wall. What the batten on the wall does basically is when you push the unit against the wall and you lock the casters, invariably when you're using the handle and you're pulling it forward, and when it reaches its limit it tries to pull the whole thing forward, and that batten at the back stops it from doing that. And it's pretty rigid, it's pretty good, no problems there, best use of space really.